Hi, I'm Andrew, one of the co-owners of Batch Brewing Company, and today I'm hosting Beerducation, and we're going to talk about pale ales. The history of pale ale is a story that takes us across continents. It's as much about mechanical advancements and the Industrial Revolution than it is about beer. The first known mention of the word pale ale was around 1703. We're not exactly sure when. But by the 1780s, it was a widely used term in England. And by the 1800s, it was just referred to as bitters. One of the biggest advancements that led to increased production of pale ale was the use of coke as a fuel for roasting malts. Coke is a fossil fuel derived from coal that produces a high amount of heat, but doesn't give off the same amount of soot or smoke. But before the use of coke, malts were roasted in fires made from wood or peat. This made the malt quite smoky, ultimately made the beer a bit brown and smoky as well. And around 1850, advancements in temperature control and malt roasting made pale ales a lot more common. And around the same time, Burton-on-Trent, a region in the UK, started producing high-quality pale beers, and one of the most popular breweries from this region, which you might know, is the Batch Brewery. And one of the reasons for the popularity of these beers was the water source that these breweries were using in the region. The Burton region water contains high sulfates, which allows for greater clarity in beer, but also allows for a higher bitterness. And it didn't take long for London breweries to realize this, so they started to treat their water to emulate the Burton region's water as well. And that process, now called Burtonization, is something that's practiced by breweries all around the world today. And now for some sea shanty stories. In 1827, a ship full of Bass IPA on its way to India shipwrecked. Yeah, cue my favorite sea shanty TikTok videos.
Soon may the weatherman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum.
Now we do our own little TikTok. But the beer wasn't lost, it was salvaged and auctioned off in Liverpool. The locals loved the beer so much, they made the breweries in their town brew this so they could drink it all the time. So as you can imagine, not long after, Bass and other breweries were brewing plenty of pale ale to meet the local demand. These were lower in alcohol than the IPAs that were on that shipwreck, and were commonly referred to as pale ales or bitter ales. Okay, so you might be saying, why is this guy talking about IPAs? Well, IPAs are a whole different thing, and they did help with the creation of pale ales, but we're going to talk more about that in a different video. All right, we're going to fast forward about 100 years because not really much happened, and we're going to dip across the pond to my home country, America. Cue the Amber Waves of Grain video.
There's a railroad train, it's on its way to nowhere.
The American brewing industry that was devastated during Prohibition in 1919 was growing and gaining momentum. And in San Francisco, Anchor Brewing released their Liberty Ale. This recipe closely followed the English style of pale ale, except for its generous use of American Cascade hops. And this is a big turning point for the style of pale ale, because now we have American pale ale, and it's known for its big hoppy character, as it's still widely known today. And in 1978, homebrewing laws were repealed. This is the start of the craft beer boom, not only in breweries in America, but in people's houses as well. Also in 1978, somebody special was born, and I'm not talking about Sierra Nevada. And in 1978, Sierra Nevada started brewing their flagship American Pale Ale, which you still know and love today. All right, well, let's explore some of these different styles of pale ale I've been talking so much about. So the first beer we're going to talk about is the English Bitter Ale. It's got a low ABV and a low carbonation, which makes it a great session beer. English bitters can have a malty backbone, but the balance is to the bittering hop addition. This has fruity esters from the yeast, caramel malt flavors. English bitters use low levels of classic English hops, which tend to bring out more earthy characters. And now the American Pale Ale, inspired by classic English pale ales, but typically features the hop flavor and aroma from the piney Northwest American hops that are added later in the boil and also during dry hopping, which is after fermentation is complete. And the malt is there to support the bitterness of the hops. And now Australian Sparkling Ale. Cooper Sparkling Ale is Australia's first internationally recognized contribution to the pale ale segment. This style was a move away from the UK beers to better suit the demands of the Australian climate. Australian sparkling ales typically use different style of hops, namely the Pride of Ringwood hops grown here in Australia. Bottle versions like this one contain yeast sediment and need to be rolled before pouring. Also, typically, kegs are stored upside down before they tip them back over and tap them so you can get this nice yeast sediment. It's a good malt backbone, nice hop bitterness, and the yeast sediment also provides a really nice fruity character as well. And now for the New World Pale Ales, and also Pacific Ales, which is a whole new style. New and exciting Australian hop varieties such as Galaxy gave birth to these styles. Stone and Wood Pacific Ale is the most popular and also the original version of the Pacific Ale. All of these styles feature fruity Aussie hops and are light in malt character and body. And this Grifter Pale Ale, and all these Pale Ales as a matter of fact, are great for the Australian summer. But wait, there's more! But Australian hasn't stopped there. We're still experimenting. We have a new and emerging style in the XPA and also the Hazy Pale Ale. The XPA is an emerging style that sits in between an APA and an IPA in its ABV and bitterness. And the Hazy Pale Ale is a more sessionable version of its bigger brother, the Hazy IPA. Well, that concludes this episode of Beerducation. Thanks for joining us, folks. See you next time.